Bitcoin, of course, would be the antidote to all of this that we're saying in terms of a breakdown. So Bitcoin is the arc, Bukele's arc is the country, and which gives rise to the idea that Bitcoin came from the future. So somehow Bitcoin is coming from the future. It came to save humanity. The only way through the portal to the other parallel dimension to support Bitcoin life would be through the airport here in San Salvador. This is the portal into the Bitcoin life. We are like part of the welcoming committee. You know, back in the day, back in the United States, I don't know if they still do it, but you move into community and there's a welcome wagon. The neighbors come along and they have like a cake and a welcome to the community and all this stuff. I don't know if they still do that. But here in El Salvador, as the Bitcoiners show up, the Bitcoin maximalists show up to Bitcoin country, they definitely get a warm welcome. We have met many. Sometimes even at the airport. But nevertheless, in our community, they come and we see them. And everyone's coming, they're making the pilgrimage. And so far, I'd say 100% of the time, they are not disappointed. Paul Krugman's saga, you know, this is an interesting guy. And of course, famously claiming that the internet would have no greater impact on the world than the fax machine. And of course, he's been anti-Bitcoin for the entire existence of Bitcoin. And he got locked out of his Venmo account. And it reminded me of Peter, what's that guy's last name?
Schiff.
Oh yeah, Schiff. Remember Peter Schiff lost his password to to the private key.
He lost his private key.
Yeah, so he's claiming, you know, this is terrible, Bitcoin doesn't work. So you have these boomers like Krugman and Peter who are using the boomer legacy model to evaluate this new technology. And of course, it's absurd, as many people point out. It's like using the horse and buggy to determine whether or not the automobile is a worthwhile piece of technology. And Krugman, of course, came in with this idea that, well, you know, I can use Venmo and PayPal and these other payment schemes. I don't need Bitcoin. Never touches and gets into the true value proposition of Bitcoin. But, you know, he's a hired propagandist. I mean, that's the bottom line. He is over there at the New York Times and he writes stuff that favors the folks that are part of that plutocracy. I don't see how you can come up with any other conclusion. But anyway, in the cosmic scale, the parallel universes and the scientific reveal this past week that scientists are getting into this idea that, yeah, the parallel universes exist, and the one of them that we're dealing with is the one where everything's happening that's happened here, but in reverse in a parallel universe coming from the future. So apparently we're kitty cat with another universe that's going exactly in the opposite direction, time's flowing in the opposite direction, everything's happening that happened here, which gives rise to the idea that Bitcoin came from the future. So somehow Bitcoin is coming from the future, it came to save humanity, there's a wormhole between that parallel universe and this universe in 2009, or middle before 2008, it dropped in 2009, and now, you know, we're dealing with that fact. And I will mention this about somebody who I follow on Twitter, who's always great about covering all of these great new scientific thoughts, that would be Brian Romilly. It reminds me of this recurring dream I've had since childhood. I'm in this room, it's got white ceiling, white walls, white floor, it's a white room. And I look around and all I see, like in the distance, is a black dot.
Yeah.
And I start to walk toward that black dot. Mm-hmm. And I'm walking and I'm walking and I'm walking, and as I get closer, this black dot comes in more into focus, and then I see that there's some text, there's something written there, and I'm getting closer, and I get nearer to it and I can read the text. It says, "Don't touch." And I look at it for a second and I look closer and it says, "Don't touch." And I reach up and I touch it, and that's when the simulation ends and everything restarts. Couple things. So to follow up on my dot on the wall, you know, we're in the period now where scientifically we're both exploring the microscopic and the macrocosmic. Yeah. So on the microscopic level, you see those images on Twitter of this is a hair follicle through a neutron microscope, whatever it's called, and it's like incredible resolution. Or the face of a gnat blown up 100,000 times, and it's like this huge face of a gnat, and there's like gazillions of them all over the place. Or the Hubble Space Telescope, or these The subsequent space telescope, there's a new one out there, the Webb telescope, I believe. So it goes into these galaxies, and they're looking at them, and they're billions of light years away, and it's hugely clarity that's there. So on the hugely macro, they're getting to the point of the Big Bang, going backwards in time with total clarity into the moment the Big Bang happened. Simultaneously, they're looking so deep into the microscopic that they're separating quantumly the atoms into the subparticles and the quarks and all these little subparticles. So those two extremes are going out at the same time. We're getting to the point now where all that is mysterious is no longer mysterious. We see the dot on the wall, we see the face of God, and then it's game over. But this is kind of a situation where the quark gluons that were looked at and peered at for the first time into the deepest bowels of our cosmic reality were staring us back. And so there's nothing behind that. This is, for lack of a better analogy, the face of God, right?
Yeah.
Once the knowledge is there in the brain, it has to end. You cannot unknow it. You cannot unknow that knowledge.
Yes.
And of course, knowledge is a virus. And as that knowledge of virus spreads throughout humanity, it engenders what you're referring to here would be a big bang and a new reset. So now these CERN maniacs, these scientists with this multi-gazillion dollar particle smasher have done it. They finally revealed the quantum gluon. And this is the face of God. And we are at end times. The only way through the portal to the other parallel dimension to support Bitcoin life would be through the airport here in San Salvador. This is the portal into the Bitcoin life. If you get on a plane right now and you fly to San Salvador and you get off that plane and you enter the land of country of Bitcoinization, you will have escaped the gluon nightmare caused by CERN. There's no CERN here. Protecting her child from predators would be considered by the predators to be toxic. Right? So the ability to protect the Bitcoin maximalist truth that all fiat money is really supports violence at the end of the day. It's pro-violence. Those people who are in the violence business would, of course, call Bitcoin and Bitcoin maximalist toxic. And that's really where the toxicity comes from. Here in El Salvador, they've taken advantage of the fact that Bitcoin, it monetizes love and peace. It's about peace and love. And you feel that in the air. There's no aggressivity here, really, because President Bukele has made the conditions right for people to step forward and work hard and feel like they're part of a mission that's greater than themselves. So I don't want to get too grandiloquent on here, but John F. Kennedy back in the 60s said, don't ask what the country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. It doesn't take more than a few words. I mean, that was a short speech with JFK. And it had a tremendous impact. People are playing Bukele speeches on Twitter all the time. And not 500-word speeches. They're saying these 3 sentences, or even this one sentence, like the one sentence that's being quoted often is, there's plenty of money if you don't steal. But I mean, it's a very simple phrase. And yet, okay, contrast that to what's happening in the United States, for example, with a lot of the scandals happening in the political class. It boils down to people got their hands stuck in the cookie jar, right? They're stealing. And so there's no money for stuff like bridges and tunnels, and the trains keep running off the train tracks, and bridges are collapsing because there's no money for that stuff because there's a lot of corruption. It doesn't take more than a few simple words, but if those words are stating this simple truth, they can be very powerful. People will say scientifically, well, there's no evidence of the ark and there's no evidence of Noah, and they would be completely missing the point. The point of the story is one where society gets so narcissistic and loses itself that there needs to be an escape, essentially. And that's the point of that story. Not that there's actually a big boat with a bunch of animals in it. It's a story that tells what happens when society becomes narcissistic and gross and ugly. And that's the point, and that's true, and that's what we're seeing today. That's what we can learn from that story. Well, this 40-day flood could be, for example, AI going wacko and taking control of stuff. That could be the equivalent of a 40-day flood. And then somebody says, let's go to El Salvador because that's Bukele's ark, and we're going to save ourselves that way. So the stories of these, and you mentioned angels and demons, right? So angels and demons are like, oh, there's no proof of that scientifically. And yet, what we're saying is that now with AI and deep fakes,
Yes.
there are like a new class of angels and demons. You're watching something online, you have no idea whether it's real or fake. Yet the dead people are now being reconstructed digitally online and coming back to act in films, right? A dead Marlon Brando or a dead Elvis Presley is using AI to be reanimated and starring on Broadway. Is that a ghost? Is that a devil? What is that? We don't know. It's a phantom. 2,700 years ago, Aristotle said, what's perfect money? Gold at that time. That hasn't changed. The same attributes are the same. Portability, divisibility, fungibility, desirability. It's all the same, but it's now better in Bitcoin. Bitcoin, of course, would be the antidote to all of this that we're saying in terms of a breakdown. So Bitcoin is the arc, Bukele's arc is the country. And so my point being that there's a lot that is simply, predictably, a repeat of the stories that nobody seems to remember, right? They say the problem is that if you don't remember history, you're doomed to repeat it. Well, guess what? Nobody remembers history, and we're all doomed to repeat it, and that's what we're doing. We're repeating our doomed history again and again and again.
Yes.
Humans are curious. That's what drives us to travel from where we are from our birth,
Yep.
go over the oceans,
Yes.
explore space.
Yes.
It's a mystery. We're curious. We build tools.
Yes.
Man
Yes.
likes tools. He builds a wheel. He builds a rocket. And
Yeah.
he goes, and of course, when we meet people, they don't know us. We don't know them, but we
No.
like his trinkets. He
Yes.
likes my trinkets. So we swap them. We created something called money.
Yeah.
And that money over time has had many different forms. And eventually it turned the form of gold because gold was the most portable and the most accepted and the most rare at that time. And that's the story of money. It allows for people to satisfy their curiosity, trading with other human beings, and knowledge bases incurred over time. But the Homo sapien apparently, according to your theory, and I agree with it, based on the quark gluon reveal at the end of the universe, we are the last Homo sapiens, and our digital avatars will continue on in our name, in our image, and they'll wonder about their origin, and we, the Homo sapiens, will have been completely scratched off the face of the earth.